And welcome back, Fourth and Long fans. It's your footy correspondent, Coach Donnie Hess here, back with another off-season supporter series chat. And as I said, I am trying to talk to more state league teams. So this is going to be another state league chat. So let's hop right into it. Justin is joining me today from Adelaide, South Australia. Justin, thank you for joining the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Alrighty. Before we get into the footy, which is what we are here to talk about, I like to know just the tiniest bit about the person that I'm chatting with outside of the game of footy. So if you want just a little bit tidbit about yourself outside of the game of football.
I'm a bit of a techie. Run my own website, dabble in scripting and Linux and free open source software. And other than that, basically try to enjoy my downtime with friends, family. Go to the football as much as I possibly can. I'm actually hoping with work because I work so much as well, easily 60 hours a week, so it's a lot hard to find um, spare time. So I'm hoping to change my roster on the weekends to actually go to more games because I always buy a season pass. But I always try to make at least 10 games a year. So trying to get those days off is sometimes a bit hard with work.
Wait, I
And I
100,
also
100% understand. I understand the grind on that one.
Yeah, and I also do a podcast as well, which we'll get into a little bit later as well, and that's out of my spare time. So I also do another one as well, which is only just a couple of episodes. It's Bayern Natter as well, so that's like, as you can see, Bayern Munich fan. So I just wanted a very laid back chat podcast, nothing like weekly or anything like that, because there's a couple of other podcasts that do English Bayern podcasts as well. But yeah, anything tech, I love it. I both use Android and iOS basically every day as well. So I'm a bit of a nerd as well, hence the glasses.
Hey,
But
embrace who you are. Embrace who you are. Absolutely
that's
love it.
it.
I absolutely love it. So let's jump into it. Like I said, we're here to talk some footy. We're here to talk football. And again, SA is football mad. So let's hop into it. What is your favorite thing about the sport of footy?
Favorite thing about the sport of footy, it's got to be the atmosphere. And I haven't gone to many AFL games because normally my work is directly correlated with that. So it's hard to get days off for the AFL. But being in Adelaide and obviously growing up, seeing the SANFL on TV before the AFL really came about, it's got to be the atmosphere completely. Also, you feel like if you go to the right club as well, and it almost feels like a second home, and you look out for one another. It's a real friendly, family friendly environment. And this it's forever changing. The dynamics have changed ever since. I remember watching a few games early and growing up, the games have changed so much now. Like it's gotten more technical, more skillful. It's never, what's the word I'm looking for? It's never like a dull moment. Like even
Mhm.
if you've got like like big outrageous scores, you can never count out the other team. Like they'll still score. Like there's no, very rarely do they go a quarter without scoring anything. Oh,
Yeah. So alrighty. And let's move on to the next one. I hope he didn't freeze here. We'll definitely have
no,
to
you're
keep.
fine.
All right. Sometimes the video froze just the tiniest bit, and sometimes this is transcontinental internet. Sometimes it happens. So we jump to the next one. I want you to go back into your memories just a little bit. Can you remember your earliest footballing memory?
Earliest footballing memory. Well, if you're talking in general, not just attending games, would probably be I was maybe 6 or 7 years old, young lad, and I used to watch Geelong Football Club games with my uncle. And that's the first time I really started seeing like football in general. Like never knew the SANFL existed or anything like that. And I remember just watching it as like, what is this?
Mhm.
So that would easily be my most earliest football memory.
Awesome. So let's get into it. You have a podcast for this. What is your Sandford Club, and why is it that you support them?
Yeah, so the podcast is Talking Centrals, and that's the SANFL team. And the reason why I support them is I lived out the northern suburbs for most of my life, or the northern side of Adelaide, because we've got from the CBD, you've got north, east, southwest sections of the state. And going out there, just randomly went to a game with some mates, my old man and my uncle, who I was quite close with growing up. and just went to a club game and basically was like, I really liked the atmosphere, supported the team, and was like, yep, this is home. So, he's basically like one of the first game I ever attended was if I remember correctly, it was Central Districts in Norwood or Woodville West Torrens. It's going way back. It's about 2004 or 5 or something like that. And
Mhm.
yeah, it was just like, this feels like you belong, So, and everyone, fans are great. They never you know, you go there and like you can ask someone a question, they don't treat you silly or anything like that, especially like you're wearing the club colors. It's basically like, yeah, no worries, go over there. Like, everyone's very friendly. And yeah, the rest is history.
Awesome. Sometimes I hear stories of guys that they pick up their club family wise, and as you said, you went to it. So would you consider the club a family club, or is it something that you just kind of picked up and it's kind of your little niche?
Yeah, no, no, definitely not a family club. Like, both my old man and my uncle, I think, did support them, but they never wore any club colors or anything like that. Um, but yeah, no, it's definitely something that I chose myself, because you could, like, I was more living closer to North Adelaide, so to speak, in the areas of the northern side. So because on the northern side you've got more than just one club, but Central Districts is all the way out at Elizabeth, which is the furthest north club that competes in the SANFL. So hypothetically, if we were just going so I got a bit of a speech impediment, funny enough. Geographically speaking, it would probably have been like North Adelaide and Prospect, because I used to actually go to the Northern Tavern a lot that I didn't actually realize was owned by the North Adelaide Football Club. So, I could have just quite comfortably gone and supported them, but the first game I actually saw was a Essentials game, and I was like, no, this would be my team. This is the atmosphere I want. Um, I remember going to the Northern Tavern one day with the Essentials gear on, and they're just like, "Get that off."
Oh boy, those always those fun ones there. So as I told you kind of pre-Mike, I'm trying to learn a lot more about the SANFL and the Waffle and the VFL. So just a little bit. So with you being the Central fans, can you give me just a tiny bit of a history lesson on Central Districts? How competitive have they been? How many premierships? Just a little bit about their history of the Central District Bulldogs.
Yeah, so the North Adelaide was actually against the club to play in the SANFL in 1958, and they were only accepted on terms that they serve a 5-year probationary period from 1959 to 1963 in B grade before being admitted into the SANFL competition in 1964. So Central District, with no team, no money, no supporters, and no experience in the league, gladly accepted those terms. And Footscray, or better known now as the Western Bulldogs, actually donated 30 long sleeve woolen jumpers and 30 pairs of socks to assist the new club in 1960. And Central's made its league debut against Woodville West Torrens in 1964 and was actually soundly beaten, which is no surprise. A lot of start get soundly beaten. The score was 26-24, 180 to 6-4-43. And Centrals would not win a premiership until the year 2000, which then sparked a decade of success, with the club winning 9 premierships in that decade from 2000 to 2010, winning multiple times in a row from 2000 2001, 2004 to 2005, and a four-peat from 2007 to 2010.
Wow.
And yeah, so they had a big decade of success there, and then yeah, since then it's been a bit up and down. They did make a grand final, I believe, in 2011, if I remember correctly. And but then since then, yeah, we haven't been the greatest. We've slipped off a little bit. So, but that's how it is when you're a supporter. You follow them, good, bad, and ugly, doesn't matter. And we'll get there eventually. So we've recruited pretty well this off season. So I don't think we'll get that close into playing finals football this year, but we'll definitely have some improvement.
Awesome, awesome. I threw this question in because again, I know that with many of these leagues, sometimes finding out not only the history, but I gotta know, do you have a big rival? And who's the big rival for Central Districts?
Well, see that depends really on like the supporter themselves, like essentially everyone. But
Okay.
Port Adelaide, Norwood are always two big rivals. And for me, it's like, so it's like about a top three. In no particular order, it'd be Norwood, Port Adelaide, and then I'd say Woodville, West Torrens as well, and North Adelaide as well, because if you go back in the history, they didn't want them to actually join the SANFL. And that's the same, I believe, with Woodville, West Torrens, but don't quote me on that one. That some clubs didn't want them to join the league either. So, I would say those top three for sure.
Awesome. So we jumped to it. Let's go back a little bit to you a little bit. Can you remember the first ever Central's item that you were ever given or bought?
That's a stubby holder.
I love
So
it.
that's Australian slang for anyone that doesn't know. In America, it's like a cooler, and it goes
Koozie.
over your
Yep. Or a
drink.
koozie as we
So
call it. Yep.
a cozy. There you go.
A
So
koozie.
yeah,
Yep.
one of those. Yeah, they sell them for like $5-10 or something like that. And because I went to the game, as I was an adult, like I didn't realize there was merch or anything like that. Like that's
Hmm.
where you buy it from. You got merch stands always at the game, especially the home games for the team. If you go to a opposition team, you won't actually find merch stands. But if you're in finals, I believe they do have a merch stand for both sides in the actual stadium. So yeah, went down there, brought myself a drink. I'm like, hey, my drink's getting hot. I've got to turn around and get a cooler for this thing, and hence there it is.
Awesome. I love it. 'Cause I think I'm so used to the t-shirts or the scarves or the knitted scarf that their grandmother made. So that's awesome that it's a stubby holder. Absolutely fantastic. So I love this. And I love this next question because for me, this is the fascinating part about it. Being a fan, it's never the same for anybody. It's never exactly the same. So I love hearing people describe it. So I want you to tell me just a little bit. Can you describe your fandom of the Central Districts? Are you one of those that you pay attention to every game, you go to every game that you can, or are you kind of I'll see it when I do kind of what how would you describe your fandom to me?
Yeah, definitely not. I see it when I see it. I watch every single game as much as possible. So, it's you got to pay the SANFL or like a digital in-app purchase if you want to watch. I think it's SANFL now. They turn around and you pay for a subscription for that, so you can watch the games live streaming. Because only once a week we get it on free TV or free to
Hmm.
air TV. I'm not too sure what your TV is like if you've got cable or free to air or anything like that. But only the SANFL games once a week. Here it's Channel 7, I think, that has the rights to it, is the only one. They decide what game goes on, and if it's not Central's, then you can't watch it. So, and worst case scenario, if I can't go to the game because like I said at the start of the episode, that I work a lot, I've got to be able to watch it to be able to review it. So
Hmm.
otherwise, if I can't watch the review, then what am I going to do for the podcast that week?
Hmm.
So yeah, definitely watch every single game. When I go to the games as well, I try to get there as early as possible, watch the reserves play as well, see who's coming up through the ranks. And yeah, it's definitely, well, not wouldn't say pandemonium like it runs my life, so to speak, but yeah, no, I don't want to miss a single game at all. If I can watch it live, I'll watch it live, be there or on TV for sure.
No, make 100% makes sense. It's the biggest thing with the podcast. I have the same thing when I do AFL reviews. I pretty much have to watch all 9 games because I can't really review 9 games or talk about any of the games if I haven't seen them. So the highlights can only do so much. So most of the time, I know your pain. I know your pain on that one. So we jump to it. I think you've already talked about this one, but I just want to be sure. Can you remember the first ever Centrals game you attended? Because I believe this is the one that made you the fan.
Yeah, so that was spoke to a little bit on it and a bit earlier, and that I went there to, I think it was like 2004. I went and saw a game, and back that was when Centrals were doing quite well, but I didn't actually know they existed or anything like that. And uncle and my dad turned around and basically said, "Hey, you're in the area. Do you want to come down to go to the football?" I'm like, "Okay, what football?" I thought it was like the AFL game or something.
Mhm.
I was like, "Oh yeah, sure." And they're like, "No, no, like local football." I'm like, "Okay, cool, but I'll go. Why not?" And then I went there and I had no idea, like that Centrals existed or anything like that, and just went to the footy game and it's like, yeah, no, this is like great, and it's a lot better than to me than the AFL, like local football. And there's multiple reasons why, like a family environment, and just you can actually even speak to players as well. Like if you know who the players are and you speak to them afterwards, there's like no actual, I mean, like you get security and people like that around in the area, but it was more. like relaxed. You
Mhm.
can speak to them and, say, hey, Trav, good game out there, and so forth like that. Than actually having to, you know, pay for VIP access or something like that.
Mhm. No, it makes 100%. And I've heard that all the time that sometimes the state leagues, it's very easy to get a hold of the players. So absolutely think that's fantastic. One of the things that I love about footy is that it is more intimate sometimes than some of the sports over here. So I asked this next one, and for me, this is one of those I equate it to picking your favorite child as a parent. I know this isn't easy, but I'll still ask it. Do you have a favorite player of the past for Centrals? And do you have a favorite player currently on the Centrals list?
Yes and no. There's absolutely so many.
Hmm.
Like I
You're
I
not the
literally
first
had to
person to say that.
I had to literally write it down and actually give you a top, like a couple, because
That's
otherwise
fine.
I've been just sitting here for the next hour just naming players. But there's actually a few. Chris Gowan and John Platten, they were premiership players for us during that decade of success. And current player Jared Schiller, he's been around for a while. His brother is going to be on leave, taking a bit of personal time off for the year. So with the comings and goings, when I start posting that in the podcast episode coming up in the next couple of weeks or so, I'll go through the comings and goings and a bit of a season overview, for the listeners at the start of that episode, start of the season, I should say. And yeah, him and his brother basically played really well together, as most brothers do if they play together. And yeah, so they'd be the top three easily for sure: Chris Gowan, John Platten, and Jared Schiller, or
Fantastic.
Schiller, I should say.
All right, I'm gonna let you have the fun moment. I love the look on the eyes when I ask this question because this is always cool to hear the memories. What is your most memorable moment as a Central supporter?
Most memorable moment. Oh, so many. I mean, grand finals are always great, aren't they? But
Hmm.
it'll have to be my first game, the first game I ever attended, because that is where you fall in love with the club. So, you can turn around and, say, grand final or this game or that game. But for me, it's what made you love the club in the first place. So it's got to be my first game for
Man,
sure.
awesome.
Um, I don't know. I think we got beaten, but it didn't matter to me.
Hey, it sparked the passion, and that's the
A
biggest thing there. Who cares? And sometimes you can even almost ignore the score because you're like, this is it. Like it's the weirdest feeling, and I know exactly that feeling there. So all right, I did I did some research because I didn't want to come in here absolutely blank. So I did some research on this next one. Thoughts on this last season? I looked it up. Unfortunately, Central's probably didn't have the season you were expecting. So your thoughts on that and on kind of why Central's was kind of towards the bottom of the ladder this year.
Yeah, so for last season, it's mainly to do with skill, like just basic skill errors. So kicking and hand passing, they just the basic skills were poor. To put it nicely, I'm a bit of a critic, but I'm also not one to just totally rip into a team,
Mhm.
especially your own. But it was just the basic skill errors, really. Like so many times we'd turn over the ball, or just make incorrect decisions. There's a lot of close games where I think almost beat Glenelg, I think, on their own home patch, but towards the back end of the season. And Norwood, which ended up being premiers as well. And we just but we got into those games and being the underdog as well, because the list wasn't as experienced and as seasoned hardened, so to speak. It's just the basic skill errors that let us down. We've got a lot of younger guys coming through the ranks as well, and those players are improving, day by day, season by season. And so yeah, basically, if we turn around the basic skills, then we will easily move up the ladder. But the main thing I look for is improvement. So we improved from last season. We improved from the season before. So when you look at the grand scheme of things, like, oh, finished the same spot, but we were playing better in those games, So and we actually won more as well than the previous season. So that's always a good sign.
Makes sense. And then that's the best thing for you is like if even if the team isn't going to be as successful, if you can see progression and change and seeing improvement, that's the biggest thing there. So 100% agree. So as I've discussed with a few of them, I know that the SANFL Waffle and VFL, their off season is completely different than what I'm used to in the AFL with drafting and everything like that. So I know that there's a little bit more movement because as we said, it's not 100% full-time professional like the AFL is. So have you been keeping an eye? I know you keep an eye on the off season for your podcast. How has their off season been? Do you think they've brought in some people, or is it going to be one of those where they've got mostly the same group back next year?
No, so we've lost some players, but we've looking at the because I've seen the ins and outs, but the only reason why I haven't done the episode any earlier is because sometimes that can change, quite late before the start of the season. The 2023 season hasn't actually come out with the SANFL fixture yet, but I believe it's going to start sometime in March, a couple months away.
Mhm.
And going from the ins and outs, we've recruited quite well, especially some of the players. I haven't been able to do any research heavily into those players coming in as of this recording of the podcast, but I will be doing that myself. As I do like to look at, who's I think will be the best recruit, like who's going to have a breakout season. And I try not to pick like a last team player. So for instance, like last season, Rhett Montgomery was one of our best players, but he got drafted into the AFL from the Essendon Bombers. Which when you get the good players, you wish them well.
Mhm.
You get a bit filthy sometimes that they're not going to be there next season. But at the end of the day, a state footballer always wants to play AFL football because at the end of the day, that's their job. So I believe most SANFL players are doing it as a career. Some I think do it as like a part-time thing, like they do have a job as well, because I think SANFL salary isn't very high, due to just like the state itself, like as in the league doesn't have like your big endorsements like the AFL and and things like that. But yeah, I do definitely check the ins and outs, and I do think we've recruited quite well this season. It's an exciting time to be a Dogs fan.
Awesome. And so then kind of the natural progression from that is that and I when I first wrote this question, I kind of kicked myself a little bit because I'm one of those. I hate the word expectations because there's almost a connotation of I expect this. And I come in always optimistic, especially when it comes to my footy team. So what are your thoughts going into next year? Do you think you'll see improvement? Do you think you'll jump up the ladder? Is finals an option, or is it just one of those you're going to kind of see how it goes, but hope for progression and maybe a move up a couple of ladder positions?
Yeah, so the thing that I would expect, so to speak, like I don't expect like the end of like the world, so to speak. I don't expect them to go, oh yeah, no, we're going to play finals. We're going to finish top two. Like if you look at how we played last season, and then the top five that ended up playing finals, you look at it and you think, well, we could put with our recruiting, we could push into, they say, the fifth spot. But my expectation is easily just improvement. Seeing what the club has done, we've got the same coaching group for a little while. It's just going to be new players coming into the fold, making sure they know how to play the systems, and going from there. And I would love to play finals. Don't get me wrong. That's what it is as a supporter. You want to see your team succeed. But I expect us to finish around about sixth. And that's going to as a beyond expectation. As long as we win more games and signs are there that we're playing better football, then it doesn't really matter to me where we finish, because you don't expect them to. Because I've seen teams in one season, they really poor, and then all of a sudden they break into the finals, and you go, wow, didn't see that coming from last season. So to sum it up shortly, is like improvement. And I would roughly see us finishing around about 6th out of 10th on the ladder, which I do believe there's 10 teams.
Mhm.
So a bit tired from work. So just missing out on finals, but winning more games and improvement, better foot skills, and seeing how all the new recruits play well for the season.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. So, and again, you just never know. I mean, each season is a different thing, and you never know how injuries are going to affect everybody. So, 100% agree with you. So, I'm gonna have a little fun with you right here. I love
Sure.
this question, especially considering I love when people get a chance to play kind of that fantasy footy a little bit. So, I'm going to install you as Central's list manager for one day. you can bring in one player from the SANFL to join Centrals to get you over that hump or make your team better. Who's the one guy you bring into Centrals and why?
I was hoping it'd be like a like unlimited salary cap, and you can get like a holistic squad. But anyway, one player, he actually used to play for us, Daniel Menzel. He now plays for the Woodville West Torrens. Him and his brother Troy, they both actually played for Central District, and they're both really good players. But definitely Dan Menzel, because he's one of those players in the league, and there's only a handful of them that can basically win a game off his own boot, but he also
Mhm.
draws the best defender and even another player as well to free up another player in your forward line because he's just good basically. And I think he's kicked multiple bags of four in a game quite comfortably for Woodville West Torrens. And I think he decimated teams in the finals, not the season just gone, but the season before that. He was basically unstoppable almost. I think he kicked a decent bag as well in the grand final a couple of years ago against Glenelg. Don't quote me on that
Yep.
because I don't really watch finals too much if my team's not playing. So because it's just basically Centrals takes most of my time.
Hmm.
But yeah, definitely Dan Menzel because actually, plus I miss him saying in the Bulldog colors as well. So
That's cool. Bring somebody back. That's fantastic. So, alrighty. My next question for me is anybody that listens to the channel knows I am a huge supporter of women's footy. I think women's footy is
yep.
a huge growing opportunity, and I think it's something that really needs the support from everybody, not just women, but men as well. So do you watch Central's women's? And if so, what were your thoughts on their last season last year?
Yeah, so I do watch them. Obviously not as much as the men's team, due to time constraints as well.
Hmm.
But they played well. We've got some couple good young girls coming through the ranks as well, and I can't really go too much into it because I don't get the time to watch it. But yeah, I would watch it if I had all the time in the world. I'd be watching every single league like Bulldogs game for Centrals. Be reserves, under 18s, under 16s, league, women's league, and everything like that. But yeah, so I do. To sum it shortly, I do watch women's games. The games that I saw, which were only a handful, they played well, and they're not one of the top teams in the women's league, but I believe that in both the AFLW and SANFLW, it doesn't get the support that I think it deserves, and I encourage anyone who watches AFL, AFLW, or anything like that to watch the women's games, go down, support the women as well. I believe the club membership as well gets you to those games as well, but I can't be too certain for that as well. But if you don't have a club membership for the SNFLW, you can always go down there and pay an admission fee to see each and every game as well.
Fantastic. 100% agree with you. And I appreciate when I have other people that say that on the podcast. Absolutely love doing it. I do it way too much sometimes. I swear I get on my soapbox a little bit. So I
No, that's fine, mate.
so we've talked a lot of SANFL and I do a lot of AFL and AFLW reviews. So I gotta ask, do you have an AFL side? If so, why? And then in kind of the same thing, you also keep an eye on their women's side as well.
Yeah, so that would be the Western Bulldogs in the AFL, which was known as Footscray. And going back to the club bit of history that I said, the Western Bulldogs actually helped out Central Districts when they first started, giving them the jumpers and whatnot. And it's basically the same colors as well. So
Hmm.
you don't have to support another different colors or anything like that. Basically, the whole house would be the same colors.
Hmm.
And
Ingenious.
I do watch some of the AFLW games as well. Obviously, not much. That's more of a if it's on, I'll watch it. The same as the AFL men's, because
Hmm.
for me, my team is Central Districts, SANFL, and
Hmm.
for the actual like country, like the state, the country league, I should say, but not meaning as in country, as in
Yeah, I get you.
country South Australia. Yeah, the actual full country.
The
That
nation, yes.
yeah, that's the better word. Thanks for that.
No
The
worries.
nation, yeah, the Nation League. It I don't watch as many games, maybe once a fortnight, once a month, or anything like that, or when it's
Mhm.
on. Because yeah, for me, it's Central's 110%.
All right. I 100% agree with, and I understand that. And to each their own, and everybody's. So these next couple of questions are going to be a little bit different because they are a little bit AFL based here. I'm gonna ask you this as a footy fan. Um, the grand final saw its way outside the AFL grand final saw its way outside of Victorian soil for 2020 and 2021. And I was rather surprised that the Victorian media was a little more amenable or a little more willing to discuss the fact that maybe the grand final might find its way to be a traveling grand final, a little bit like the Super Bowl is for gridiron football over here. So I like asking people, what are your thoughts on that? Do you like the fact that even Victorian media is starting to kind of let the MCG bias go? Or are you one of those that when it comes to the AFL grand final, it really should be at the MCG?
Yeah, I was surprised about the Victorian media doing that myself and saying that. I was like, "Hey, what?"
I know.
When
I
they
double
said that,
taked when I saw it.
yeah, and I'm a bit divided on it. Like, I don't, like the tradition. If I've
Mhm,
never actually gone to a grand final at the G, it'd be something that it would be on the bucket list to do. Go see Western Bulldogs. I missed out in I think 2016 when they got into the final. I was just
mhm,
saying to a mate in a bar, when they got into that grand final, it was a GWS or Western Bulldogs who were going to make it. And I turned around and said, whoever's going to win out of this game will win the final. And my mate was actually shocked that it actually happened. But going back to the original question there, being divided in tradition, you know, is good and all, but I wouldn't mind seeing a home team final as well. So, for instance, in South Australia, we've got the Adelaide Crows and Port Adelaide Power.
mhm.
If they finish on top of whoever they play into the grand final, if they would so choose and make it, I wouldn't mind seeing like them be able to get the bragging rights to be able to like, hey, we're going to have the grand final here because we finished on top of the ladder above you, and we're playing you in the final. Like it'd be great for each and every state for not just South Australia, for any state if that was to be the case. But whether that's up to the AFL, I believe, to
Mhm.
decide. So I don't think any states actually have the power to be able to go, no, this is what's going to happen. This is what we're going to do.
Mhm.
But yeah, if it went that way, I wouldn't be completely disappointed either.
That's that darn 50-year contract that the MCC has with the AFL when it comes to the grand final that I think again it's a pie in the sky discussion. I know. And I agree with you. I think it's the one thing that I think maybe it's also because I'm an interstate supporter, I'm a Sydney Swan supporter, is that I'm like it does kind of give a disadvantage to the interstate squads, say if you play a Victorian team, because the Victorian are going to be able to get a hold of more tickets a lot easier than
Yeah, that's
say
right.
the Adelaide Crows, Port West or West Coast, Fremantle, all the Queensland, and then both the New South Wales ones. So it's like you can see the argument from interstate fans. So it's always a
Uh,
fun one, but I
I
just thought it was
also
an
do
interesting talking point.
Yeah, I also do see that they're also thinking of, at the end of the day, the AFL is a business and revenue wise, the MCG is the biggest stadium that we have in Australia. So it's, like Geelong last year's premiers, like, they play Cardinia Park or Simmons Stadium or GMHBA, whatever it's called now, which I think is the latter.
GMHBA.
Yeah, the latter.
It's
Goes
hard to
through
keep
renaming
track. It
rights all
keeps
the time.
changing names every 2 years.
That's it. But they play that ground so well, but I think they've only got, even with redevelopments, if they're finished, it's like I think only 45,000 or 55,000 or something like that.
Hmm.
And if that's basically the whole Geelong fan base. So like you're only going to have the opposing team's cheer squad, and you know advantages or not, like you just look at it and go, well, like would you then play a Victorian team at the MCG anyway?
Hmm.
Of who it is, whether it's the Bombers at Docklands or Geelong at Cardinia Park. Would you still have
Hmm.
them up with their Victorian? So still play them at the G.
Yeah, I
So,
guess
but hey, time will tell.
you never know. Like I said, I don't think it's going to be in my lifetime when that particular decision is going to happen. But it's just it's interesting to discuss. So, and now we'll jump actually to something involving the state that you're currently in and the city that you're in, and that's the AFL's announcement of Gather Round. Again, don't get me started on the name. I'm not going to worry about the name right now,
Magic
but
Round, I think it is. I'm not sure.
it's Magic Round ripoff, but they're going to call it Gather Round for the AFL because they can't use Magic Round because that's what the NRL
Yeah.
uses. So it's very fascinating that all 18 clubs are going to find themselves in South Australia for one round this year. Many of the games at Adelaide Oval, a few games I think Norwood, I think Glenelg, and I think there's one. I think it's the Barossa Valley. I think there's
Yeah,
one
up in the
way out there.
Riverland. Yeah.
And so I got to ask, as an SA person, and I know, as you said, you work a lot. Do you have any interest in Gather Round? And if you can, would you go to any games?
Oh, definitely. Gather Round, I'm a little bit divided again. But that's more so, excuse me, that's more so to do with, I think that a lot of the games being played at Adelaide Oval, I see why they do that as well. When I saw the whole fixture for the gather round, I was a little bit surprised that you had both Adelaide Crows and Port Adelaide Power playing different teams at Adelaide Oval. I would have just thought, why don't you make that a showdown
Mhm.
instead? And because the showdowns always draw a big crowd, and then you could have like a couple of big Victorian teams like Collingwood and Geelong play against each other at Adelaide Oval, which would still put bums in the seats, so to speak. And then I actually thought that I was a bit disappointed that obviously Central Districts didn't get any games being played there. It's so I was thinking that more SANFL grounds could have been used and utilized because of they're going to have a bye for that whole round. So no SANFL will be played during that round,
Mhm.
and that you know that was my basically big gripe with the whole thing. And the really good thing is though is that the Riverland's going to be getting some football because I myself was actually out there for a bit, and it's quite secluded. And I was thinking that I don't think we've got a ground up at like Murray Bridge or anything like that, which is a little bit more closer to the CBD. But to see have people who go out to the Riverland that don't normally able to get to an AFL game or a SANFL game even because they've only got country league more so out there. Like for instance, down in Wonka, I actually think they're they're the Bulldogs as well out there.
Mhm.
They've got the same colours and that, and so they're only used to country grade football. So just for them to be able to go to an AFL game would be really fantastic for everyone out in the Riverland.
Awesome, awesome. So it just I thought it was very interesting when it comes to it. It'll be fascinating. It'll be a very I'm intrigued by that because some of the matchups are quite interesting. I think there's a couple of teams that I'm surprised they didn't get Adelaide Oval spots, but let's not get into that. So I'm
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Yeah, let's not get into that.
I think Fremantle was one of them that I was a little disappointed. I thought they deserved an Adelaide Oval spot, but then again,
Oh, definitely, especially this season, last season.
oh, especially, and I kind of understand what you're talking about with the showdown, but I think they want to spread out the Adelaide teams because they don't just want all of them at one game. I think that's the reason that they have Adelaide playing somebody and Port Adelaide playing somebody because then that splits, so you don't have all the SA fans just wanting to go to that game, and then
Yeah,
kind of saying bugger all of the others. So I kind of understand it, but I do love the idea. That would be cool to make like the Saturday night game be the showdown. It would be fantastic. But again, I'm not the one doing the fixture, so I can't really complain too much. So we go to the next couple of questions are a lot of fun for me because I told many people I have not been to Australia. It is on my bucket list. It is something that I want to do. So I'm doing a tiny bit of research for when I do go. So I asked this of all of the people that I chat with. I'm an American. Americans, we love our food at the sport. So I got to ask, what's your go-to food when you go to the footy?
go-to food. There's so many. I mean, you can't beat a meat pie.
Hmm.
So yeah, a lot of Australian thing is that go meat pie, go to the football, bit of sauce on the top. Your best thing to go and do like because I don't normally get a lot of food especially at obviously AFL games because I don't attend too many, but at the SANFL I always like they always have like a Villiers or Balfour's pies or anything like that. They've got pie warmers and yeah so your main options is I think like hot chips, meat pies, pasties, sausage rolls, stuff like that. Um, so yeah, it'd definitely be meat pie.
Awesome, awesome. And then, and this will be interesting because I know you said you attend a lot of games at Centrals. Where's your ideal place to sit to watch the footy? Where's the one place you got to be when you go to the footy?
Yeah, so when I go to Central's games, the best actual place for me. Sometimes people go into like the cheer squads or other places like that behind the goals. But for me, I don't really like going behind there. I feel like I don't be able to get to see the full view of the ground because
Hmm.
when I look at the games and watch the games, I don't go there just when I enjoy it and so forth. But I like to see how the teams set up like
Hmm.
tactically, like if they're how they are. So I try to go to the wing because I feel that yes, you got to do a little bit more movement with your head for both sides. It's like
Hmm.
say for instance watching a tennis game. If to put it into retrospect, you've got to look left and right. Yep, basically like that. But for me, it gets a better overview of the whole entire field of where we're all set up or anything like that. The only downside to being out on the wing is that if the ball is on the other side of the wing,
Hmm.
it's going to be very hard to be able to see what's going on down there. But if it's in the middle of the ground or closer to your side of the wing, you get around about 75% decent view of what's happening on the pitch.
100. Yep. That's been one of the most popular answers is the wing. And especially the ones that go to AFL, they tend to want that second tier where they have that raised up view to where you kind of get the whole field. Has been the most popular answer for me. So, and then my last question, just because I like this one, because I love hearing everybody's different answers. Favorite game of footy you have ever seen at the field, on the telly, doesn't matter. Favorite game of footy you have ever seen.
Favorite game of footy I've ever seen. That's a tough one. It will actually be an AFL game. The old I don't know if you've heard of it or you've seen it. The line in the sand match
I've
against
heard
Essendon and
of it.
Hawthorn. Yeah, so this you can look on YouTube and actually watch it. I think it's like a 15-minute of videos. There's so many brawls and everything like that. Like I'm not for one to have, not condones. No, condone would be probably the right word. I would endorse, violence on the football field because you don't want, young youngsters thinking that's, okay to be able to, hit people or anything like that. But there was a lot of emotion in that game, and it wasn't really the spot fires, but it was more so the fact that, there was a lot of bumps, which is I feel is starting to go out of the game, because um, players are getting like bumped. They've got the grade system where if you go too high or anything like that, you're
Mhm.
automatically rubbed out, even if it's accidental. I understand that, but if it's accidental, you're not got any malice in it and trying to knock the player out, so to speak, literally. It's accidental. Look, I don't think some players like who are really good, they've been rubbed out for a few weeks because of something's happened at the last minute. But that line of the sand match, really good bumps, a lot of emotion. Obviously, I'm not a Bombers or Hawks supporter, but I can imagine they'll probably all be yelling and screaming if they're at the ground that day. So yeah, it's like that's one of the best games I would say for anyone that like because there's a lot of passion and emotion, as a supporter and even the players, to check that one out.
Yeah, yeah. I've heard the stories about that one. Another one that I've heard a lot about is the 1989 Grand Final, between Hawthorn and Geelong. I think has been one that I've actually watched the entire. I found a video of it. That is another incredible game for sure. So, Justin, that is going to do it for my questions here today. It's been a fantastic conversation. Thank you for teaching me a little bit about Centrals, and this has been an absolutely fantastic conversation. I know you are a super busy guy and I caught you on your one day off. So I am going to
That's
thank
fine,
you
mate.
so much for hopping on today.
Not a problem, Donnie. Thank you for having me.
Awesome.
It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Alrighty. And that is going to do it, ladies and gentlemen, for our episode. Again, keep an eye out. More episodes still to come. AFL, SANFL, Waffle, and VFL clubs still to talk to. We're going to get to March. We're going to get to the AFL season. And as I said, this year, we're going to try to do some SANFL and some Waffle updates this year because I think it's really good to keep talking footy and keep footy in our breaths, even over the off season. So we will be back very, very soon with another episode, and we will see you again very, very